guys, today I'm doing something a little different. Earlier I went ahead and took a shot at making a wine glass out of an old wine bottle, and I did it in a really crude way by just scoring it and then running it under hot water, quenching it in cold water, and it breaks off. So it came out decent, but there's a little chip here and it's not quite as clean as I would have liked. At the bottom I just made into a vase. So I made this little jig here so that I can make a cleaner and straighter cut, and I'm going to give it a go with this really cool bottle that I have and try to make a cool little goblet out of it. So I'm going to show you this little jig and then show you me cutting it out. So basically what this does is it has two rails for the bottle to spin on. They don't really have to be wheels as long as it's smooth. I see a lot of people on YouTube use bearings and wheels and all that, but that's kind of unnecessary because, as you can see, this turns pretty smoothly. And then what makes the cut is my Dremel, and I have the diamond cutting wheel on it. So I'm going to give that a go and see if that works. How it's connected is there's just a little hole in the back of the Dremel that I screwed to this block of wood, and it's supported with this block of wood. It can move up and down and side to side, so I can control the pressure of the cut that I want. And then on this side you can see the wooden little conical shape that keeps the bottle turning on its center. So I can basically do all this myself. I'll just rotate the bottle with one hand and control the pressure of the Dremel with the other. Pretty easy, everything's clamped together. And the Dremel will hopefully be throwing most of the glass shards into this bucket, so I won't have glass going everywhere in my eyes and stuff. This Dremel bit has taken a pretty good beating, so I don't know if it's even going to cut, but I'm gonna see if it cuts at all. And I'm not going to be cutting all the way through the bottle, I'm just scoring it pretty deeply and then breaking the rest off using the hot and cold method, where you heat it up and then dump it in ice water, and it cuts the bottle kind of easily. So that's hopefully how it's going to go. I'm going to give it a shot and we'll see what happens. Okay, gloves and goggles are on and the Dremel's plugged in, so I'm going to start doing this and see if it cuts. So turn the Dremel on first. Okay, it's working pretty well. I'm gonna get a spray bottle of water to keep it cool, and then I'm gonna keep on going a little bit, get the cut just a little bit deeper. And we'll keep on going. Start the Dremel up again. Some more water. So here's a little close-up of the groove. It looks really straight and clean, so that's good. The jig is doing its job really nicely. Let me see if I can get a better view of the cut. There you can see it pretty good. I'm going to go a little bit more. At this point, I think the bottle is plenty scored to go ahead and heat it up and then rapidly cool it to break the rest off. I'm not sure how thick the glass is here, but I don't think it's very much thicker than what I cut. And I'm not sure if I wanted to cut through it all the way with the diamond wheel. I'd rather actually just break it off with cold water. So I'm gonna get a candle going and I'll show you how that's done. So I got a little tea candle. I'll light that up, and then you want to have your cold water source nearby I'm just using a sink in my garage, but if you want to use a bowl of ice water or something, that might actually work better because of the temperature difference. But you want to have that ready so that as soon as you're done with your candle, then you can dunk it immediately. So just kind of rotate it above the fire right on your crease, or right on your groove that you just cut. Really slow so that you get it nice and hot. And you want to do this for a while because you want the glass to get really hot. So this is causing the glass to expand under the temperature, and then when you bring it to the cold water, it's going to contract so quickly that the glass actually breaks pretty cleanly too. So I'm hoping the groove that I made is deep enough to produce a really clean break under the water. And if it's not super clean, then we always have a sanding drum and all that stuff to get it nice and clean. But you really want to get it as clean as possible when you break it, because sanding glass is really time consuming. It's pretty difficult. So I actually just went ahead and put it back on my jig, and after about one rotation it popped off. So really the heating and cooling method probably did most of the work, because this glass is actually a lot thicker than I thought it was. It's probably about 0.2 inches, maybe closer to a 1/4 inch, but it's way thicker than I thought. So the heating and cooling did most of the work. The groove I put was maybe a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch. So it's very shallow, but it looks like the cut is pretty clean. There's a few little jagged edges that can be easily sanded out, but it came out really good. So I'm gonna sand it now. I'll show you a little bit of that. So if we take a closer look at the edges here, you can see it has some ridges, but I think that actually looks really cool. Kind of goes along with the whole theme of the bottle. So what I'm gonna do is just sand the sharp parts off and leave it smooth, but with some of the ridges still intact. So I think it's going to look really cool. So I'm going to use some 60 grit sandpaper. So you just take it on a flat surface like so, and do kind of like a circular motion. And you want to have a vacuum nearby, because in the beginning a lot of big chunks are going to come off, and you don't want that going everywhere. So every once in a while you want to sand it and then vacuum all the particles out real quick, and then it'll keep the sandpaper clean and sanding effectively. I'm not going to do this for too long because I don't want to flatten it, like I said. I just want to smooth it out a little bit. So I'm going to do this a little bit more, and then I'll move over to just smoothing out the rest of it. You also want to sand the outside and the inside edges to make sure they're not sharp, so that it doesn't cut you when you're drinking it. So you can take a look at the edge here. It looks really nice. I love how it has some unevenness to it, but it's still really smooth. I can run my fingers over the whole thing and it won't cut me, so it feels great, looks really good. And the top is now done, so I can move on to making the bottom of the glass, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that. So I could go and use the other part of the bottle for a vase or something like that, some type of container, but I ruined the label and it just doesn't look as good anymore. The back is okay, but what's cool about the rest of the bottle is the bottom is the same size as the part that I just cut off. So if I use my jig and cut the bottom out again, use the same method to detach it, then I have a perfectly sized and a good looking bottom part for my goblet. So I'm going to reconfigure my jig to cut this out, and then I'll show you what it looks like and show you how I cut it out as well. So I just added this little aluminum bracket here to control the depth of the cut, and I'm going to do the same thing as I did for the top to cut the bottom out. It's a little bit uneven, so hopefully once I get it off I can just sand it and make it a little bit more even. That's just because of the shape of the bottle. So I'm going to get cutting with this. So we're back over here at the candle. Hopefully this time I can give you a better look at the actual separation process once I put it under the cold water. Some ice water here. After that last ice quench, I popped it back on the jig real quick to separate it, and it only took about one revolution again to separate it, but here it is. I'll give you a closer look at the rim. So just like the top, the bottom came out a little bit jagged, but it's a little bit more even than I was expecting, so that's good. I'm going to sand it up. It looks really cool, the bottom. I'm going to sand that up, get it nice and smooth. So going back to the trash can over here with my 80 grit sandpaper, I'm going to start to smooth this out a little bit. Not too much work needs to be done here. I'm really just smoothing out the jagged edges. So here's a close-up of that edge. It's pretty smooth, just like the top, and no sharp edges, even though I won't be drinking off this portion of the cup, obviously, but smoothed it out for good measure, so can't get cut on it or anything, and it looks pretty good. Now I just need to attach it to the top of the cup.